Hey everyone, welcome back. This is Eric Nelson with Nelson Gunsmithing. Today I'm going to do a very simple video. This is how a gunsmith lubricates his pistols. Now, this is what we call big boy rules. I'm using my expertise as a gunsmith. I'm giving you some suggestions and advice in general for lubricating tactical pistols. However, you should always refer to the owner's manual and follow the lubricating instructions that come in it. Anything else you do can void the warranty on your weapons, can damage them, cause them to fail to fire. So it's very important to make sure you know what you're doing before you proceed. These are general instructions, not specific ones. So we're going to jump right in. Not a lot of tools required. I've got my awesome gription mat, as you can see here. I've got 3 of these. I'm using my little Real Avid tool kit. And Slip 2K, this is their EWL, and this is in a needle applicator. And the needle applicator is a very important tool for this. A little bottle like this will run you $12 to $15 for a 3-pack. Get one for yourself, give 2 to your buddies. And if you all split a 4-ounce refill bottle, this will last you for years, literal years. You don't need much. You don't need much oil to begin with, you need even less Slip 2K. So with tactical pistols, first things is that we put very, very, very little oil on the slide, if any at all. The reason for this is primarily due to the striker. Now Glocks in particular, Glock Industries reminds us not to let any oil get on the striker element. If any oil gets into the plunger assembly down in the tunnel there, it can create hydraulic forces that prevent the striker from moving back and forth. This can cause oil to jet out at high pressure. This can cause the striker to jam. It also tends to attract dirt, and because there's nowhere for the dirt to go, it'll create more drag in the striker channel. So you want to keep that bone dry, or as near to dry as possible. That also includes all the other parts of the upper of the slide here. When you get your safety plunger and your ramp, your pickup ramp for the next round. So as rule of thumb, no lube goes into the inside of the slide. However, I do like to put a little lube in the extractor. What I do is I put just a drop right here on the extractor plunger and some on the extractor itself, and you just let it sit for a few seconds and it'll pull itself down and balance out. And that's it. That's all you have to do. It doesn't take any more than that. What we'll do is we'll take a rag and wipe off the remainder. A light surface coat of oil is always okay for guns, especially if you have some bare metal showing. So I was to take my greasy rag here, I could wipe it over the frame, over the top of the slide here, by the plastic sights. And that just keeps rust from accumulating. Now then, once in a while it may be necessary to completely disassemble this gun. Maybe you do have some gunk in the striker channel. What you could do is you take your slightly oily rag, we'll use this as an example, and you simply wipe the oily rag on the part in question, like the striker. Okay, and then what you would do is you would take a virgin rag, a completely dry and clean one, and thoroughly wipe this off until there's absolutely nothing left, till you can't even get any residue on your fingertips. Steel has a microstructure to it that is not perfectly smooth, and some oil will pull into the steel itself, and that is the ideal amount of lubrication is one that you cannot even feel with your fingertip. So that is again not what Glock and what a number of other manufacturers recommend, but I've had some luck with that, keeping guns running smoothly, that next to nothing lubrication. Okay, and again, you shouldn't even be able to feel it with your fingertips when you're done. Where we do want lube is on the frame itself. Now the obvious points are on the rails. You see 4 drops. Most guys, if they were using a larger applicator, they would have put the equivalent of 6 or 7 drops down. We also want to think about how our weapon moves, where the pivot points are. There's an old adage with the M1 Garand. That's where you put grease where it slides and oil where it pivots. For tactical pistols, I use only Slip 2K. So let's think about our trigger. You can see my nice SSVI trigger in there. I think it's a great upgrade for any Glock. We know that's the trigger pivot pin. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull the trigger in the forward position there. I'm going to reach in, where you guys can see, I'm going to put a little bit of lube on either side of the trigger where it touches that pin, and that'll work down in there, and that'll smooth out the relationship where the trigger rotates around the trigger pin. We're going to put a little bit on the trigger bar here, and don't be afraid to get your fingers a little greasy. Get your fingers down there and wipe some on it. An important spot to hit is right here. This is the plunger lifter. This is your safety plunger. When that lifts up, it allows your striker to go forward. So lubricating this helps smooth that action out. So we put a little lube there. The last place we want to put, two more places we want it. I like some on the cruciform. Okay, the cruciform is what grabs your striker and pulls it backwards. So having a little lubrication on that helps with the release, and that makes it for a little smoother feeling action as it goes back. We want to put some here where it touches the slide, a little bit back here, and this little channel that it rides in. And the very last spot where I put a very deliberate amount of lube is right back there under the disconnector, because the disconnector is what does the most amount of work. And you can put a little drop on the spring, and that's not super important, but that just does keep your spring protected, and it'll work itself down as it goes. And that's it, and that's lubricating the frame on a Glock. One important point I want to make too is you want to make sure that your slide is bone dry, and particularly you want to make sure there's no lubricant here. This is the part that will touch your the rounds remaining in your magazine, and we don't want any lube on the mags, we don't want any lube in the magazine, and we don't want any lube on the brass cartridges. Okay, bullets are not designed to be fired with lubricated cases. It will cause some severe issues. It'll cause hydraulic shearing. It can cause a fire. It could cause some weird kabooms. Better to just not do it. You want your brass to be nice and dry. For the barrel, we put a little bit right here. This is where your locking lug is, and your barrel will rotate on your locking lug. Just put a little bit right here on the nose, and a little bit on the hood. And then just a fingertip application. Because the barrel does make contact with the slide in a couple different points, and by doing this we can help improve the reliability and function. Again, keeping the ramp very dry, making sure none goes back over the top of the hood down into the chamber. When you do your chambers, obviously you run your brush through it a few times. I recommend running a dry rag or a rag dipped in solvent like acetone through it also. That just makes sure that there's no oil left whatsoever. And then I always put a little on my recoil springs right here, just a bit there, and you don't have to worry too much about that. That's not wholly necessary, but it'll settle in and it'll keep any bald spots from developing rust. And I tell you, if you've been using Hoppy's brand CLP or something similar and you go to Slip 2K, you're going to see a phenomenal difference. It's worth going in with a couple of buddies to get a large bottle, which looks like this, divvied up into these little 3-ounce. You'll have a little left over, and again, this will last you for years and years with that needle tip applicator. So let's set the Glock aside. I also have here a SIG P320. Now, this is a different design of gun, so we're going to have to look at it a little differently where we want our lubrication spots. If you have an older gun where you see where the finish is worn off, where you see bare metal, that's always a good spot to put a little lubricant. Now, with these more complicated sear mechanisms, some people are tempted to bust out the G96, and G96 does work well. It works well if you have a lot of crud or contamination built up down there. You haven't been able to clean it in a while. Even Rem Oil, their spray application is alright, though this actually works a trick for cleaning, believe it or not. Like I've used it with some 4/0 steel wool. For some reason, it just works really well for that. It might be the Teflon. But this is an older version. Do not get anything with Teflon in it. PTFE, which is basically what Teflon is, vaporizes under the pressure that you see firearms used, with the high heat and pressure, and it's a carcinogen. So avoid anything with Teflon. Again, I use this Rem Oil mostly for doing specialized gunsmith cleaning tasks like polishing and sanding. G96, there's your answer. G96 gun treatment. Bottle like this will last you a long time. Really good for revolvers too, which I'll do in a different video. Alright, so here we are. So we want to look at, again, the P320. We want to think about where the reciprocating parts are. So we see our trigger bar moving there. That's a good candidate for some lube. Your disconnector is going to be back here. This is our sear assembly. Check your slide release, which pivots right there. It's an easy one. There we go. And that's it. And again, what we're looking for the parts that move during the normal operation of the weapon. So you see our sear here, you see our lifter, we have the disconnector, and the trigger bar. So we can get a little deeper down there because I feel a little hitch. So I can, I see how I went right down in there. There we go. Little drop there. Oh, that's much better. I can feel it smoothing out already. And again, it doesn't take a whole lot, but you have to put it in the right spots. A good example you can see here is a little wear developing on the slide catch. Again, if you put on a little too much, spread out with your fingertip. And that's all you really need to do. Again, when you're lubricating your pistols and you're trying to do it with some precision, simply blasting it full of a foam spray or G96 or anything like that, that can work, but really the best way to get good performance with your tactical pistols, precision application of good lubricant like Slip 2K. So again, recap, use your needle tip applicators. It only needs a little bit, but if you use it precisely, you can do a much better job lubricating with much less effort. Again, this is Eric Nelson with Nelson Gunsmithing. Tune into us on Patreon, patreon.com/Nelson Gunsmithing. We're also on Facebook. Always happy to answer your gun-related questions and do virtual gunsmithing correspondence if you're in an area where you need a little help, but you can't take it to a local smith for some advice. As always, be safe out there.